at the stake of harm to people that have been harmed, you would rather do something faster and forget about the people that are going to be harmed even more.
Welcome to the Jackie Rae Show.
Welcome back to the Jackie Rae Show, your home for news, sports, and community. I'm, of course, your host, Jackie Rae. I'm excited because we are going to get to the community aspect of this show. Now, if you saw the podcast 2 weeks ago, Jason Ruiz was on the show to talk about Measure JB. This is a big deal in the city of Long Beach, so I am excited to have Caprice McDonald with us today. She works for Civil Service. You are the Employment Service Officer with Civil Service, right?
Right.
Is that your official title?
Yes, but I want to make it known that I am not on work time right now.
Yes.
I am on my own personal time, and I always let everyone know I was born and raised in Long Beach. So as a resident of Long Beach, I'm a stakeholder and I have a vested interest on the other side.
Yes.
So it's important for me to speak up.
Yeah, I agree. And I'm so excited because it's very important to me to make sure, Jason did a great job. He followed this for 10 months. So he's very well versed on the topic, but it's also not, it's still from the outside looking in. So it's great to have someone with such a wealth of knowledge about how the civil service actually works, which I think that might be a good starting point for people to help them understand how the civil service works. So can you kind of tell us what the civil service actually does here in Long Beach?
Well, first start, civil service is a separate appointed authority. It's a commission with commissioners appointed by the mayor, 5 commissioners. They have the oversight of the hiring and any movement of city employees that are in the classified service. So people might say, well, what's the classified service? Well, the city charter defines what's a classified employee. So unclassified employees are those elected officials, their staff, and then department heads and managers, because those are all at-will employees. So when you think of unclassified, you think of at-will employees, meaning you can be let go for any reason. They don't have to have a valid reason. They could just let you go. And classified employees is basically everyone else. Everyone else defined, unless the Civil Service Commission authorize the city leadership to be able to have a classification and move to the unclassified service. Yeah. So there's the city charter's online, so you can actually go in there, because I'm not actually citing the charter by memory, because there is like some exceptions, like the Harbor Department. They have a certain clause in there of how they can use the unclassified service. So in general, the majority of employees are classified employees, and classified employees fall under the jurisdiction of the Civil Service Commission. Gotcha. So classified employees have employee protection, meaning they have appeal rights. So if they are disciplined, fired, terminated, or demoted, there's an appeal process.
Is there an appeal process if they feel like they've been overlooked for a promotion?
They can bring their concerns to the Civil Service Commission. The Civil Service Commission can look into that.
Okay.
And for example, and I can give you an example just recently, because public knowledge, we had an employee that came forth and said, hey, I feel like I was not given, I wasn't treated fairly. Right. Not necessarily pointing out that the supervisor intentionally did something wrong, but sometimes there can be unintentional consequences when people don't follow through and do what they're supposed to do. So here's an employee that was basically trying to go to day shift for whatever reason. I don't know what the personal reason is, but he was told that, hey, the only positions we have available are on day shift are the non-career unclassified, which non-career is just another story about that. Right. Non-careers are temporary unclassified positions, but that's a whole nother story.
Right.
A lot of abuse there.
Mm-hmm.
Or he needed to go from a grade 3 to a grade 1 position.
So that's a demotion.
So that a demotion. So they call that a voluntary demotion. So he was asking me questions, and he was telling me about how he took a demotion. I was like, "You did a demotion?"
Oh, so he did take it.
He did take.
Because he had to work days.
Yeah.
So no, okay.
But what he wasn't told about was his other options. You know, like, and he was like, it doesn't feel right, because now he saw other positions that were open, and he was like, he goes, wait a minute, I was told that there were no other positions. And in fact, he applied for one of those positions while they were busy trying to work his paperwork out. So during that time, he was applying for that position. He was still a grade 3. And when they finished figuring out his paperwork a month later, they had demoted him. But meanwhile, he never heard back from that one position that was open. So you can imagine how he felt, like, I'm being overlooked. What's going on?
I want to circle back to that because that lends itself to a question I want to ask later. But you mentioned that you feel that this measure isn't going to pass.
Right.
I can tell you, our mayor, Rex Richardson, emphatically disagrees with you. You know how I know this? Because he saw the promotion. Now, granted, by his own admission, he did not watch the full podcast that Jason and I did. We definitely addressed all of his concerns. But he watched the promo video that I did for Instagram, and then he called me and he took umbrage to the fact that I said that the city had not done its due diligence. Now, to be fair, to his point, that's an accurate criticism if you just watch the commercial. It's not an accurate criticism.
But if that's how your style, that's how you get your information.
Right. If that's the only thing that you saw.
Thumbnail. Very educated, right?
Then that was a valid statement. But if he would have watched the whole podcast, and he would have known that I said, look, it's difficult for me as a voter to say you've done enough, perhaps would have been a better term, enough due diligence if in how many years since it's been since measure, what was it? GG.
2010.
So in 14 years, if you haven't been able to figure out how to make this system work better, to me, that's not enough due diligence. Now, granted, from the commercial, he's got a point, but from the entire podcast, I'm gonna say he doesn't. But he did say that I was on the wrong side of this. And he said that this is a measure that he believes is going to pass. And given his understanding of who I am and the communities that I primarily serve as a journalist, he feels like the reason why I may feel, you may feel, and other people who look like us might feel that this is not a good look, especially when you're talking about, and I'm going to look right at the camera when I say this, Long Beach has a long-standing history of anti-Black sentiments that have yet to be addressed. And for me, that's very concerning because we have a mayor, Rex Richardson, who definitely led with that, especially when you're talking about getting the votes from Black voters, that, you know, he started this racial reconciliation plan. On our call that we had just a few days ago, he said, you know what, we Long Beach, as one of the only cities in SoCal, he might have said all of California, I can't recall, but it's either SoCal or all of California, that has mandated racial and equity training, which to me, for anyone who's ever had a job and you've had sexual harassment training, that you just trying to get through the training, you're not paying an ounce of attention to it. And it doesn't matter if there's not enforceable practices, that if somebody goes against the things that you learn in training, that there's consequences to that. So in my opinion, that is a scapegoat, if you will, to say his ultimate point was this is not a measure to address racial equity in the city. Now, my response to that, and I want to get yours, is if that's not the intent of this bill, then you've literally put the cart before the horse. But what are your thoughts on that?
Well, just based on what you said, I did put some notes down. I think it's really reckless for him in his position as a leader to basically they're saying using as a push for this is faster hiring.
Yes.
Well,
and more local hiring.
Yeah, but you're setting aside what civil service was meant for. You're setting aside that at the stake of harm to people that have been harmed, you would rather do something faster and forget about the people that are going to be harmed even more in a process because you're moving away civil service to oversight.
But in that, he said at the beginning of his term as mayor that that's when these conversations started. And he said there was a lot of conversation. And at that time, civil service had an opportunity to offer suggestions on how to make the current system work. But there were no suggestions that came out of that. Is that correct? Is he correct in that assessment?
No.
Okay.
And the reason I say no, that is not correct, because maybe he had a conversation with someone in civil service, but I am key to the recruitment and hiring, and you didn't have a conversation with me. I'm the first. I'm the first African American
You are
manager in
okay.
civil service has ever had, but I don't get a real seat to the table. So no, you did not have a sit down conversation with me. I did not have a seat at the table, and I'm the one that knows best about the hiring for the classified service in employment services. And I was not invited to have a seat. No one asked me. I remember sitting at one meeting, and it was to ask like, hey, how can we do preferences? You know, and I'm not even confident that he was actually there, or if I was just talking to the city attorney or with the executive director. But that's when we brought up preferences. We talked when he brought up preferences. I was like, well, you know, the only preferences is in the city charter for veterans preference. So really, it's almost like when you come to speak to us, we're already just in the chair having to defend. It's like you're really not asking, hey, can you explain the process? No, because you feel like you're already informed about what the process is for some people that have never even gone through the classified process.
So that's a different conversation. If you're on the defense, instead of saying, hey, this is the problems we're seeing, what are your ideas to fix it? That's an entirely different conversation.
It is. And, you know, but the conversation was more on preference. And I was like, okay, well, if they're wanting to have an excuse to go to the charter. In fact, when the conversation first came out, oh no, I don't want to change the charter. I don't want to do anything like that.
So when you say change the charter,
go to the charter. Whenever they come to civil service and talk about changing the charter, we already know what they mean.
And so what in the charter would they be changing?
The powers, shifting powers, and shifting the oversight from the Civil Service Commission
to the
city
charter.
manager.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a charter, because in the charter, the voters have spoken time after time, over decade after decade, that we want hiring oversight. We want checks and balances. We do not want all the power under the city manager to be able to be in charge of hiring and firing without any oversight. Because when the city manager handles, for the example, unclassified, that is all behind closed doors. And
yeah, I'm not a fan of the city manager's position, like, at all. And I'm just going to go on record and say that. And part of that is definitely what I've heard, the experiences a lot of people that have had with Tom Modica, which is our city manager here in the city. I tell people all the time, no matter what job you are on, just keep in mind that human resources is not there to protect you. It's there to protect the company. I feel like you got to look at the city manager's office the same way. Look at them like I've trained you guys. If you've been following me long enough, look at the city manager's office the same way I've taught you to look at human resources. It's just not going to work like that, because otherwise I feel like we wouldn't have had to settle so many lawsuits. We would have addressed them earlier.
Yeah, one was just settled 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
For $320,000, and it was the case of Robert Ware versus the city. You know, and
I'm glad you mentioned that, because before we got on, you mentioned him, and so I went and I looked him up. And the thing that stuck out, I mean, the deposition in that is extensive, first of all, but the one thing that stood out to me was they had interviewed a lot of people at the airport, Black employees specifically, and while they all said, I haven't been specifically discriminated against, they all cited numerous ways that they've seen anti-Blackness within that department. And so for me, and again, I understand that as a Black person, we understand racism differently than white people. It's you understand something deeper when you experience it versus when you don't. So I understand that. But for me, I feel like I would have still been like, hold on. Why are all these people saying the same thing? Let's pump our brakes and address this. Let's figure out how we can make things right with this individual, because clearly we've gone wrong somewhere. And then let's take it one step further and make sure if there ever comes a time where we have to address this again, it's going to be an isolated incident, and there's not going to be a plethora of people who say, yeah, no, it's very anti-Black here. So the lack of intentionality on the part of the city when it comes to us makes this a no for me. Because if you can't be and you damn sure you can't say to me, it's not about y'all right now. Let's do this first. We'll get to y'all later. That's what it feels like to me.
And I would prefer, and I would have so much respect for the city leadership if they, before they want to take away oversight, can you put a dent into fixing some of the discrimination in the city? Because I've experienced it, and I've seen it firsthand, and I've seen people harmed just by watching it happen to me.
There's an emotional.
Yeah. So I would have so much more respect. It's like, can you address that? And I am curious to know also, I'm not privy as to who they have investigate, but it is important who investigates, because just for example, to remove civil service oversight, it hits differently for me than it hits other people that do not look like me, because their background's not like me. And it is about race, because your parents probably did not struggle or have to go through the same things that my parents had to do, or you did not experience challenges that I had. Like coming into the city, I've been with the city 33 years, and it might seem like, oh, are you envious because you did not soar faster than others? There was the opportunity, and the system was not set up for me to skip steps. If I came in at one grade level, I had to work my way up. I see individuals that come in and they will skip steps, the required experience. It's almost like they're missing City of Long Beach 101 employment, because now you've put people in positions that somehow they seem smart, or they seem young, and it was mentioned at one management conference, we get the young people in, and I'm like, wait a minute.
So if that's the case, it's not just racism, it's ageism.
Oh yeah, I definitely see ageism, and no one's listening to me when I say the preference, it opens a door for ageism, because now you're talking about equity issues here as well. You're saying that someone that just came out of Cal State Long Beach, that went through a formal internship, and had 1 year of experience, that now because they came out of Cal State Long Beach, they're going to get extra points over that baby boomer who's still working, that did not go to Cal State Long Beach because they went to some Southern university, but have raised their family in Southern California, and may not even be Long Beach, maybe Lakewood or something, or Cerritos. That's still close enough. We don't need to put a wall around Long Beach like we're putting a wall around United States.
Right. That's such a great point, because as I was looking through, I didn't even consider that until right now, just hearing you say that, because, reading through it, the way they have things numbered, I thought that was genius. Some things in politics I think are marketing. And so I did think they were genius to put, we're going to hire locally more, because I was like, yes, I know so many people who have had to move out of Long Beach because they can't afford Long Beach. So that's the first thing that I was like, okay, that's a definite maybe right there. So that's good marketing. But to your point, I graduated college longer than I care to admit ago, and I didn't go to Cal State Long Beach. I went to, I'm a Buffalo. I went to CU Boulder. So does that mean that if this is where I want to make my home, and to your point, that also means I'm older, so I don't have that immediate, but that's not experience. And I know that my experience is going to far exceed anyone who gets out of just getting out of college. So where is the checks and balances? And I do see that as a way to exclude another group of people. That's terrifying.
It is excluding because no one's expecting baby boomers to still be working right now.
Well, this economy,
but,
we have
but
to.
we are.
Everybody has to work.
Yeah, because of healthcare as well. So, and most of us baby boomers, we look like baby boomers. So, another little minus point there. So as you're giving these young people preference points, we're getting point deductions just for being a baby boomer.
That's a good point. And so there'd have to be a way to even that out. I'm sure the city would say, well, that's why we give, more points to veterans, because veterans typically, not always, but when we think about veterans, we think about, older people, at least I do. Do you think that that's their way to try to circumvent?
Well, when I heard them, and maybe I need to look at it, it sounded like they were allowing people to compound preferences. And then it's like, it feels like the Oprah show. You get preference, you get preference, you get preference. Well, if you're giving preference to everybody,
then why is it special?
What's the point? What's the point here? So, and I told the mayor when he came to visit staff, and I was trying not to be disrespectful, but I had to tell him, I said, this is like you're adding candy to vote for this and I'll give you this. And that is so unfair for people that are really looking for opportunity and they're thinking like, this may be the way, but you're having them throw away what is considered almost like, I like Anthony Holmes, like civil rights of employment.
Right.
You're moving that aside for this, but now folks are going to have unintended consequences later on. You know how they say I learned this during this process, they say if you F around, you find out later. And I see that happening, and it might not hit right away, but it will come. It will come.
So the measure would also establish an independent civil service employee rights and appeals commission. But in your mind, that does not resolve the problem of civil service going away, right?
Well, there's already an independent civil service commission. So it doesn't make sense. It's almost like the public doesn't know. Let me tell them something that they don't really know. It's kind of like they're going to establish something that's already established. So
why put?
Yeah, because the public doesn't know. They don't know any of this. And so if you don't know really what civil service do,
then you're reading this thinking this sounds great.
And you believe what people say. Like right now, I saw an article, the POA leader put out a handout, and it was like, who's telling you all this stuff? Where are you getting this from? And telling them like, hey, civil service takes so long to do all of this, and civil service does the recruiting. Civil service doesn't do the hiring. So when I was in the audience at Leadership Long Beach's forum this week, a guy from the Firefighter Association, he got up, took the mic because he was proposing for it. He was like, it takes 7 months for the onboarding to happen. And I'm like, it probably takes even longer because civil service doesn't do the onboarding.
So that's also, like I said, been the point of contention. I think everybody can agree that it does take way too long to get hired within the city. So why is that? If it's not, what's the disconnect there? Why does it take so long?
There's various reasons. Okay. So, I mean, if they really wanted to challenge civil service, they could say, it maybe take too long to get to a recruitment. But as far as taking too long to the hiring.
Wait, so when you say get to a recruitment, like this department says, hey, this is the position we need hired, then you're saying recruiting for that might take a while.
Well, for us to get to it, but I almost feel like those mofos set us up, okay? Because we will get a requisition and we would need to run a recruitment, and then they'll show up, you know what, don't run that one. A position that they already have a list of names, they don't want it anymore. And they want you to run that recruitment again. But you know what? You have a list of names. Hire. Okay, let us run this. I had one classification where they told us year after year, no, we don't need it. We don't need it. They had it a vacant position in their budget, but it's like, no. And I would say, well, who's doing the work?
Right.
They're like, oh no, we, but it's not a priority to us because we have this classification, that classification, and there are probably too many classifications in the city with overlap duties.
Gotcha.
That's another issue. HR, they got a lot of stuff on their plate that needs to be fixed that is undone right now. So I don't know how they're going to take civil service too.
Right.
But but to answer the question why hiring takes so long, it's the departments. We give them an eligible list, and why are you not hiring? You now have 90 days to do hiring. How come you don't have butts in the seats yet?
Yeah.
Right?
Okay. So you're giving them a list. They're not hiring from the list, and then they're turning around and saying, "Oh, but the list is old." So it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy kind of thing.
That too, some of that, but you give them a brand new list and they will take longer to do it. There was a refuse worker that they were trying to hire off of a requisition. I go, that requisition is canceled. They're like, and it was canceled like almost a year ago. Wait a minute. We have a brand new eligible list and updated requisitions. So this person is from that last eligible list, so we can't refer them to a requisition. Oh, this person was still in onboarding.
What?
Why did it take over a year to hire that refuse
And that has
operator?
nothing to do with you. The onboarding
No.
process has nothing to
Yes.
do with you.
Yes.
Okay.
And I was like, and they said, oh, it was the background that took. And I go, for refuse operator, I get it for public safety dispatchers and fire and police, but why did it take that long to onboard a refuse operator?
So just so I'm understanding it, so you give them a list, they can pick a person off that list, and once they pick that well, technically, once you give them the list, is that the extent of your part in them hiring for that
Yes,
position?
and we have to make sure that they're hiring in a fair manner too. So
I'm glad you mentioned that
Yeah.
because that was my point in contention as well on the phone with Rex, because even how he was describing it to me, I was like, that is setting people up to be discriminated against because, I asked him, I said, well, do people get promoted? He said that the promotion is similar to the list that they would get, for like a requisition. You get a list of people. This person is in group 1. This person is in group 2. Person is in group 3, or these people. And I says, okay, so you have to hire from group 1 first. He says, no, you can hire from anywhere off the list. That seems drastically unfair to me.
Oh my
because
God, it sounds like the people are getting informed from the uninformed. Okay. And it's such a high turnover, and each department is not taking full responsibility to make sure their new people coming in are trained. Because I almost feel like sometimes I get stressed out, and when I see things come through and they're wrong, like it pains me to see a hire come in and they have an effective date, and they're trying to process, our staff's trying to process a personnel transaction. I go, how did they even get that person's name? They weren't referred to a requisition. So that tells me that, did you not even consider the other people? Because if there were no names referred to that rec, how did you get to that person? How did you get to hire that? So we're that check and balance, and we have to push back. But the way the city system is set up, it's problematic, and it's like this for years. And I get the excuse that, oh, it's like this in other cities. It's the payroll system. But the departments are required to offer interviews to people in the higher bands first.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Because these people have clearly probably tested higher. They have more experience, these kinds of things.
And it's a competitive process.
Right.
So the fact that, you can hire from anywhere on the list, that's saying it too loosely. You best have justification and rationale. So if you got to band C, that means you did your due diligence to bring in everyone in on band A and to interview them. And it's problematic if you come back to civil service and it's like you couldn't hire anyone in band A, band B, then something's wrong with that exam process. The assessment wasn't right. Then we cannot run the exam the same way.
Well, to me, and see, I didn't even think of that, but to me, it sounded as like a loophole to discriminate against people.
It is,
because you can say, you know, if I have the education, the experience, and I tested well, and I'm number 1 in Group A, and you hire number 28 in Group C, then now I feel like there's something about the people, everybody above, whether it's they weren't your friend or they didn't fit, you know, the right age, the right look. There were reasons outside of their ability to do the job on why they were overlooked.
but also you brought up a good point. You just went from band A to band B and band C. So what's the point of vet preference if it got you to band A and then you just went, well, I could hire anyone from the list. Rex, what you told Jackie, you just said people can have preference, but it doesn't matter because you can hire anyone you want from the list.
That's basically what he said.
And, you know, and I had numbers in my head and I cited them at city council this week. I was the number of, because we have to do numbers all the time for fiscal year and stuff. That's why they were like, well, why does she have numbers? Well,
Isn't that your job to have numbers?
Yeah, and we have year-end annual reports. You know, anyone can ask for it and get numbers and stuff. But the number of veterans that received Veterans Point qualified were 112, and 12 of them were disabled. How many of them were hired? Zero.
Zero disabled veterans were hired.
Okay.
And they should be at the top because the preference numbers that I saw, that should put them right.
Right.
Yeah.
And then out of the 100 that weren't disabled that had veteran points, only 7 were hired. You know, if you had 300 hires, how come they weren't hired?
Right.
And right now, what I feel like is problematic, and I've told like police department recently, I was like, you know, we need to look at your dispositions, because in order for them to go from one band to the next, we need to see dispositions. If I see a lot of interviewed and not selected interview, what is that? What does that mean? What does that mean?
Are they not required to disclose the reason why they skipped over so many people at the top of the list?
We, civil service, because we're so small, we do our best to do oversight. And civil service, we have 21 positions, okay? Total. I mean, 21 bodies running
for the whole city?
For the whole city. And they actually challenged like our director's salary, like, oh, for 21 people. We shouldn't be 21 though.
Right.
We shouldn't. There's a whole lot of work to do. So our analyst is probably doing the work of 3 or 4 analysts. So imagine trying to manage a department that is so understaffed. You know what? The departments that have a large number of staff, their work is smaller compared to the director who is trying to manage a department that has so much work and understaffed. Right. Because, you know, if she had too many people working for them, they've got time to go out and mingle and fist bump with the mayor and hang out and tell their side of the story. But when you have when you're directing a department is so short staffed, you don't have time for any of that. You're constantly. Sometimes I think like, oh my gosh, she needs to take a moment and slow down. I feel like her pace is, hyper, and that's the entire staff. Yeah. I feel like, oh my gosh, I need people to, like, are you guys drinking Celsius or something? Right. And no, it's just the pace. But civil service is 21. Human resources right now, they have 85, and they got approved for 6 additional bodies.
So let me understand this. So human resources basically handles the unclassified employees?
They handle the unclassified, which is management. Okay. And they don't necessarily handle the city prosecutor. They do their own.
So that's interesting, because if they're handling unclassified, but the majority of the positions in the city are classified, why is their department so big?
Well, right now I've seen it since they started preparing. They started preparing for this ballot measure before January. Okay. That
So
they
they're
started doing the footwork beforehand. All the things that we do, there's like, hey, can you train us? Even though we're putting it out there in the public that the work you do is antiquated or your methods, but we want you to teach us how to do it so we can mimic it and emulate.
it seems a little concerning to me because it sounds like Human Resource took a preemptive strike on the belief that this will pass.
Oh, yeah.
That's concerning to me because this is up to the voters and the people of Long Beach. And so why take, I get saying, let's start thinking about policy, but actually bringing people in before the votes are counted is problematic to me.
Yeah, there's people put in place to they're doing work in the same way. I mean, they told us that, hey, everyone will keep their jobs.
That's what I was told too.
But what does that mean? Like just classified? Just classified? Or are you talking about management too? But keeping jobs, meaning doing the same work, or you're dispersing them throughout the city?
And does that mean you have to take a pay cut? Like, am I going to have to reduce? I think these are all legitimate questions. Can they do that?
Well, I think that was probably part of, I didn't you really delve into the letter agreement, but the machinist unit, they're not coming publicly because they did a letter of agreement with the mayor. And, and I get that. To me, I'm like, well, it's 3 employees in our department out of the 21 that you represent. Because one could say like, hey, are you ready to let a very important system go aside for 3 employees? And part of the thing that they talk about, like they're going to be able to go anywhere they want if they don't want to go to HR, but they can do that anyway. They're in a classification that is widely used. Our clerk typist is used in all the departments. The payroll clerk is used in all the departments. So
this isn't something new.
So you
they can do that now.
You kind of negotiated and got something that was probably already
Right.
given anyway. But it's like, ooh, deal sealed. So they're trying to make good on whatever agreement they met. I guess they probably said we won't publicly support, or we're going to remain neutral.
So I want to yield the floor because you got your no on JB right behind you. And if you could just tell the people who listen to the Jackie Rae Show and live in Long Beach why they should vote no on Measure JB.
Employee protection is so important. And it's not just important to the employees. It's important to us because we care about the people that are serving in those roles for us. I don't care if they're the school guard, if they're the refuse worker, and to even think like, wow, you're giving preference points to people that get out of college. Not all these jobs require college or technical training.
Right.
And I feel like all the jobs matter, no matter if you're the one that's just greeting people versus the scientist that's working for the city. So employee protection is really important because civil service oversees and gives classified employees a voice when they feel like they're mistreated. And so like you brought up earlier about, the city's like, there's no racism, we've investigated. A lot also lies on how was that person made to feel? You may have made a comment, but it went over your head. But now you look, this person is, it's hurt.
Right.
Because of how you made them feel. Now, as a resident, not just employee protection, but when discrimination happens, it finds its way to our pockets. Okay. So I see a lot of these ballot measures like, oh, this is going to bring extra money to the seniors. I go, is it really, or is it to pay out these lawsuits that are coming? Are you getting ready? And because I feel like our leadership and our mayor, I feel like they're very smart, and they're really smart. They know better.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this lawsuit, the class action suit is coming because you just settled this individual suit. So you need to put something on a ballot right now and start getting some extra money, because that could probably really like put a huge dent in the city's budget.
Right.
You know.
Okay, so if this measure doesn't pass, tell me the top 3 things that you think could fix the delay in the hiring process for the city of Long Beach.
Okay. So first thing is key. We've got to put the vendetta aside, the vendetta from since 2010 when the first measure GG didn't pass. You're going to have to give staff. You can't say, sure, you can have oversight. Let me see how you're going to do it.
With 21 people.
I'm not going to give you any money to do it. You know, if you think we're still working on typewriters, can you give us the money to pay for the computers? You know, to me, the civil service director should not go directly to the city manager to ask for money and position and budget. The director should go directly to the city council, because we're having oversight, a separate appointed authority. Are you really expecting the city manager to make sure we have all the tools and resources we need to have oversight over him and their departments? No.
Right.
No. And so resources, we don't have enough money for training staff, because rules, laws change daily. We need staff to be updated. And definitely we need the staffing, the people. So that's key. The second thing is, which is going to result of having additional staff. Now we're going to have enough people to have the oversight. Okay. So right now, there's a 90-day rule that requisitions can last 90 days. Well, you know what? Those requisitions are living like beyond, you know, it's like, we're busy trying to run the recruitments and give them the list and then do our checks and balances when they're trying to hire number 30 and they never on a ranked list and they haven't even offered an interview to number 1.
Right.
So if we have enough staff, then we can have those areas checked. We can say, you know what, you know, if you didn't hire, then requisition canceled. Because I could show you years back where the departments would have to go to commission and ask to extend the life of a requisition because they needed just a little bit time, you know, and they would extend it and they would get on it and get the hiring done. But that's not happening because, you know, I don't have staff that have 4 arms and 4 legs. So they can only do what they can do, because non-career, I'm telling you, like I said, that's a whole nother subject. The non-career status hiring is being abused over and beyond. It's supposed to be a temporary position, and they're supposed to come on board with the same for the same qualifications. It is not a apprenticeship. It is not for you to handpick and give someone experience
so then they can get
then that you can now hire them, and that's how it's being used. And it's so unfair, so unfair. And we do not, civil service does not oversee how they're hiring in a non-career. So there's people getting opportunity unfairly, and there's some people that are being left out. It's like, why can't I be privy to that opportunity? You know?
That sounds like a reasonable request.
Yeah.
That was easy enough. I thought it was going to be like these, oh, well, that might be tough. But I do thank you so much for coming on the show. I know you have probably a lot more you want to say, but how can people kind of get access to some of the information that you talked about today? I know you have some links and stuff. Can you share those with me so I can put those in the description of the podcast so people can take a look at more information about this?
Well, because it's so much and it could be overwhelming, I would tell folks, you know, they can call civil service and not ask, of course, don't ask, how should I vote? Is you can say, hey, you know what, we're in a community. We would like to invite civil service to come out and talk to the community and tell us what you do, you know, because we do have we kind of revamped our recruitment and outreach division, and their job is to educate the community, you know. So the more you learn about what civil service does, the more information you could be like, huh, well, I like to know, well, what have you done in this area lately? So right now, because the community is not as informed as to what we do, they don't really know what to ask.
Right.
So, but during this election, if you haven't voted already, and even if you have voted, you still might want to know, did I make the right decision? You know, you can go to the website, No Unmeasured JB, and we have some videos on this here.
Well, thank you. I thank all of you for your due diligence. I appreciate that. And don't forget to vote. If you want to, make sure you vote before November 5th. It's just going to be easier. I'll definitely keep you posted. And like I said, stay tuned because I'm going to try to get someone who's for Measured JB and just to see where their thought process lies with that. But make sure you hit that subscribe button, send it to at least one friend, and stay locked in with me. I'm always on Instagram. That's the easiest way to find me, at Jackie Rae TV. If there's something going on in your community, I know I owe at least one person out in the community a phone call about the homeless encampments in her neighborhood. Just letting you know right now, I'm going to get to you. But if there's something going on in your community that you feel needs a little bit more attention, please make sure to email me or DM me on social media. I'm everywhere at Jackie Rae TV. And remember, guys, life is short, so make it good. We'll see you next time.